Hello and welcome back to the Plutarch Project. Today we continue on with our Origin series with the Japanese cosmogony story, The Tale of Izanagi and Izanami. This is drawn directly from Myths and Legends of Japan by F. Hadlin Davis's Chapter 1, The Period of the Gods, written in 1912. Enjoy! We are told that in the beginning, quote, heaven and earth were not yet separated, and the yin and yo not yet divided, end quote. This reminds us of other cosmogony stories. The yin and yo, corresponding to the Chinese yang and yin, were the male and female principles. It was more convenient for the old Japanese writers to imagine the coming into being of creation in terms not very remote from their own manner of birth. In Polynesian mythology, we find pretty much the same conception, where Rengi and Papa represented heaven and earth, and further parallels may be found in Egyptian and other cosmogony stories. In nearly all, we find the male and female principles taking a prominent and, after all, very rational place. We are told in the Nihongi that these male and female principles, quote, formed a chaotic mass like an egg, which was of obscurely defined limits and contained germs, unquote. Eventually this egg was quickened into life, and the pure and clear part was drawn out and formed heaven, while the heavier element settled down and became earth, which was, quote, compared to the floating of fish sporting on the surface of the water, unquote. A mysterious form resembling a reed shoot suddenly appeared between heaven and earth, and as suddenly became transformed into a god called Kunitokotachi, or Land Eternal Stand of August Thing. Whew! We may pass over the other divine births until we come to the important deities known as Izanagi and Izanami, male who invites and female who invites. About these things has been woven into an entrancing myth. Here is their tale. Izanagi and Izanami stood on the floating bridge of heaven and looked down into the abyss. They inquired of each other if there were a country far, far below the great floating bridge. They were determined to find out. In order to do so, they thrust down a jewel spear and found the ocean. Raising the spear a little, water dripped from it, coagulated, and became the island of Onogorojima, spontaneously congealed island. Upon this island, the two deities descended. Shortly afterwards, they desired to become husband and wife, though, as a matter of fact, they were brother and sister. These deities, accordingly, set up a pillar on the island. Izanagi walked around one way and Izanami the other. When they met, Izanami said, quote, "How delightful! I have met with a lovely youth," unquote. One would have thought that this naive mark would have pleased Izanagi, but it made him extremely angry, and he retorted, quote, "I am a man, and by that right should have spoken first. How is it that, on the contrary, thou, a woman, shouldst have been the first to speak? This is unlucky. Let us go round again," unquote. So it happened that the two deities started fresh. Once again they met, and this time Izanagi remarked, quote, "How delightful! I have met a lovely maiden," unquote. Shortly after this very ingenious proposal, Izanagi and Izanami were married. When Izanami had given birth to islands, seas, rivers, herbs, and trees, she and her lord consulted together, saying, quote, "We have now produced the great 8-island country with the mountains, rivers, herbs, and trees. Why should we not produce someone who shall be the lord of the universe?" Unquote. The wishes of these deities was fulfilled, for in due season Amaterasu, the sun goddess, was born. She was known as, quote, "Heaven Illume of Great Deity," unquote. And it was so extremely beautiful that her parents determined to send her up the ladder of heaven, and in the sky above to cast forever her glorious sunshine upon the earth. Their next child was the moon god, Tsukiyumi. His silver radiance was not so fair as the golden effulgence of his sister, the sun goddess, but he was, nevertheless, deemed worthy to be her consort. So up the ladder of heaven climbed the moon god. They soon quarreled, and Amaterasu said, quote, "Thou art a wicked deity. I must not see thee face to face," unquote. They were therefore separated by a day and night and dwelt apart. The next child of Izanagi and Izanami was Susa no, the impetuous male. Later on, Izanami gave birth to the fire god, Kagutsuchi. The birth of this child made her extremely ill. Izanagi knelt on the ground, bitterly weeping and lamenting, but his sorrow availed nothing, and Izanami crept away into the land of Yomi, what we would probably consider something like Hades or Hell. Her lord, however, could not live without her, and he too went into the land of Yomi. When he discovered her, she said regretfully, "My lord husband, why is it thy coming so late? I have already eaten of the cooking furnace of Yomi. Nevertheless, I am about to lie down to rest. I pray thee, do not look at me." Unquote. Izanagi, moved by curiosity, refused to fulfill her wish. It was dark in the land of Yomi, so he secretly took out his many-toothed comb, broke off a piece, and lighted it. The sight that greeted him was ghastly and horrible in the extreme. His once beautiful wife had now become a swollen and festering creature. 8 varieties of thunder gods rested upon her. The thunder of the fire, earth, and mountain were all there leering upon him and roaring with their great voices. Izanagi grew frightened and disgusted, saying, quote, "I have come unawares to a hideous and polluted land." Unquote. His wife retorted, quote, "Why didst thou observe that I had changed thee? Now am I to put to shame?" Unquote. Izanami was so angry with her for ignoring her wish and breaking in upon her privacy that she sent the 8 ugly females of Yomi to pursue him. Izanagi drew his sword and fled down the dark regions of the underworld. As he ran, he took off his headdress and flung it to the ground. It immediately became a bunch of grapes. When the ugly females saw it, they bent down and ate the luscious fruit. Izanami saw them pause and deemed it wise to pursue the lord herself. By this time, Izanagi had reached the even pass of Yomi, where he placed a huge rock and eventually came face to face with Izanami. One would scarcely have thought that amid such exciting adventures, Izanagi would have solemnly declared a divorce. But this is exactly what he did do. To this proposal his wife replied, quote, "My dear lord and husband, if thou sayest so, I will strangle to death the people in one day." Unquote. This plaintive and threatening speech in no way influenced Izanagi, who readily replied that he would cause to be born in one day no less than 1,500. The above remark must have proved conclusive, for when we next hear of Izanagi, he had escaped from the land of Yomi, from an angry wife, and from the 8 ugly females. After his escape, he was engaged in copious ablutions, by the way of purification, from which numerous deities were born. We read in the Nihongi, quote, "After this, Izanagi, his divine task being accomplished, and his spirit career about to suffer a change, built himself an abode of gloom in the island of Ahaji, where he dwelt forever in silence and concealment." And that, ladies and gentlemen, is our tale of Izanagi and Izanami. Thank you so much for checking in once again on our Origin series. Look forward to our next video coming out soon. Have yourselves a glorious day, a fabulous life, and as always, good day!